"Your role is being absorbed by my new team," Tracy announced, her voice echoing through the conference room. "Your access ends today." I felt every eye in the quarterly meeting shift to me. Some expressions showed shock, others pity, but most reflected confusion. A wave of uncomfortable murmurs rippled through the room. "I see," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. I closed my laptop, gathered my papers, and stood. "I wish you all continued success." Without another word, I walked out of Whitman and Company, the business my grandfather started, the one I'd helped build for 18 years, leaving my company badge on the reception desk as I exited. My name is Mary Whitman, and at 42, I never imagined being fired from my family's business, especially not by my own sister. But perhaps I should have seen it coming. Whitman and Company wasn't just a business to me. It was my legacy. While Tracy chased an MBA and networked with investors, I stayed behind, mastering every operational detail of our import and distribution business. I knew every vendor, understood every contract, and had personally trained most of our staff. When our father retired last year, the board's decision to name Tracy as chairman stung, but I understood the optics. She was the face investors wanted, polished, ambitious, with the right degrees and connections. I drove home in silence, replaying Tracy's triumphant expression as she announced my dismissal. She'd always seen me as competition rather than an ally. Growing up, if I received praise for my hard work, Tracy found ways to eclipse it with flash and charm. She didn't want to share credit. She wanted to erase my contributions entirely. As I pulled into my driveway in Nashville, my phone buzzed. It was Thomas, our logistics director. "Mary, what the hell happened?" His voice was tight with anger. "Half the office is in shock." "Politics happened, Thomas. Tracy's been planning this for months." "What will you do now?" I allowed myself a small smile, thinking of the folder sitting on my home office desk. "I have options." What Tracy didn't realize was that I'd seen this coming. 6 months ago, when she started excluding me from strategic meetings and questioning decisions I'd made for years, I recognized the pattern. I began preparing quietly, meeting with investors, securing legal counsel, and even leasing office space in a building 15 minutes from Whitman and Company. "Call me tomorrow," I told Thomas. "Get through today and we'll talk soon." I ended the call and walked inside, feeling strangely light. The chess piece had been moved. Now it was my turn. The following morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. The first call came from Abigail, our client services director, at 7 a.m. "I just submitted my resignation," she said without preamble. "I'm not working for someone who operates like that." "Abigail." "No, Mary. I've watched you build relationships with every client we have. You're the reason we retained Blue Ridge Trading when they were considering switching suppliers. You personally flew to Chicago when Westcrest Industries had that shipping disaster." I sighed, remembering those sleepless nights. "We did what was necessary." "Exactly. And now Tracy thinks she can just replace you? With who? That consultant who doesn't even know where our warehouse is located?" By noon, Thomas had called to say he'd also resigned, followed by our entire logistics team. The finance director, who had worked alongside my grandfather when the company was still operating out of a garage, stopped by my house with a bottle of whiskey and his letter of resignation. 30 years, Mary," he said, shaking his head as we sat on my porch. "Your grandfather would be furious if he could see this." I poured us each a glass. "He built something special. So did you. The company doubled its client base under your operations strategy." He raised his glass. "To whatever comes next." I hadn't asked a single person to leave. In fact, I'd been careful not to discuss my plans with anyone at Whitman and Company. But as the day progressed, so did the text messages and calls. By evening, I learned that more than 20 staff members had resigned, including our entire operations team and half of client services. My father called around 6 p.m., his voice strained. "Mary, what's happening at the company?" Tracy says there's some kind of mass exodus. I didn't organize this, Dad, I said truthfully. People make their own choices. Tracy says you're poaching staff. I felt a flicker of annoyance. I was fired yesterday. I haven't offered anyone a job. A long pause followed. I might have made a mistake, he finally admitted. Maybe, but it's done now. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and reviewed the business plan I'd been developing. Whitman Solutions would focus on streamlining logistics for boutique wholesalers, the exact clients Tracy had been neglecting in favor of pursuing larger accounts. I'd already secured funding from 2 investors who believed in my vision and had signed a lease on office space. The foundation was set. Now, I just needed a team. 3 days after my dismissal, I signed my first client. Ironically, a former Whitman & Company account that Tracy had deemed too small to be profitable. 2 more followed by the end of the week. My home office quickly became insufficient, as impromptu meetings with former colleagues filled my calendar. It was time to accelerate my timeline. On Monday morning, I drove to the office space I'd leased in a renovated factory building downtown. The large open floor plan featured exposed brick walls, abundant natural light, and enough room for 30 workstations. I stood in the center of the empty space, imagining what it could become. My thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the open door. Thomas stood there with Abigail and 5 other former Whitman employees. "We heard you might be setting up shop," Thomas said with a smile. "Thought you could use some help." I hesitated. "I haven't officially offered anyone a position." "We know," Abigail replied, "but we've all worked together for years. We know what you're capable of building." The weight of their trust settled on my shoulders. These people had walked away from secure jobs on the principle of loyalty. I couldn't disappoint them. "I can't guarantee anything yet," I cautioned. "Whitman Solutions is still just a business plan and some startup capital." Thomas laughed. "Mary, stop. You've been running a multi-million-dollar operation for years. The only difference now is that your name will be on the door." By the end of the day, we had arranged desks, set up a temporary network, and created a workflow plan. Everyone took roles similar to what they had done at Whitman & Company, but with expanded responsibilities. The energy in the room was electric, something I hadn't felt at the family business in years. That evening, as most of the team headed home, I received a text from Tracy. "This is a legal matter now. Expect to hear from our attorneys." I showed the message to Thomas, who had stayed behind to help with the network setup. "She's bluffing," he said. "What's the legal issue? You haven't violated any non-compete, you haven't taken company property, and everyone left voluntarily." "She's angry. The warehouse manager told me they couldn't fulfill 3 orders yesterday because nobody knew the procedures." He shook his head. "That's not your problem anymore." "No," I agreed, "but it is our opportunity." I opened my laptop and showed him the spreadsheet I'd been working on, a list of Whitman & Company's smaller accounts, all of which Tracy had categorized as low priority. "These clients have been neglected for years," I explained. "They need a partner who values their business." Thomas studied the list. "This is at least $2 million in annual revenue if we can convert half of them." "Exactly, and we already have 3 signed." I closed the laptop. Tracy removed me from the company, but she forgot that the company isn't just a building or a name. It's relationships, knowledge, and trust. Thomas smiled. "And those walked out the door with you." The cease and desist letter arrived the following day, demanding that I immediately discontinue all efforts to appropriate Whitman & Company clients and personnel. Tracy had wasted no time. I forwarded it to Eleanor Banks, the attorney I'd retained months earlier when I first sensed trouble brewing. "This is harassment, not law," Eleanor said when she called me back. "You haven't violated any agreements. Your former colleagues left voluntarily, and the clients you've signed chose to terminate their relationships with Whitman & Company before contracting with you. So we ignore it?" "No. We respond firmly and factually. I'll draft something today. But Mary, This isn't the last we'll hear from them. She was right. That afternoon, my father showed up at our still-forming office. He looked older than when I'd seen him last, the lines around his eyes deeper, his shoulders slightly stooped. "This place looks promising," he said, glancing around at the bustling activity. "Can we talk privately?" I led him to the small conference room we'd set up that morning. "Tracy is furious," he began once the door closed. "She says you're deliberately trying to destroy the company. By starting my own business, that's quite an accusation. Half the operational staff left, Mary. Orders aren't being fulfilled. Clients are calling with complaints." I kept my expression neutral. "And how is that my responsibility? I was fired, remember? In front of the entire company, with no warning and no transition plan." My father winced. "I didn't know she planned to do it that way." "But you knew she planned to do it." He looked away, his silence confirming what I'd suspected. My own father had approved my removal. "The board is considering legal action," he finally said. "They believe you orchestrated this mass departure." I leaned forward. "Did you bring any evidence of that? Any emails where I solicited staff? Any recordings of me asking people to leave? Because there aren't any. People trust you, Mary. They follow your lead. I haven't asked anyone to follow me anywhere. They made their own choices after seeing how Tracy operates." My father sighed heavily. "She's young. She'll learn." "At what cost? The business grandfather built? The relationships I've maintained for 18 years? "I'm asking you to consider a resolution," he said. "Maybe you could come back as a consultant, help rebuild the operational structure." I nearly laughed. "So Tracy can fire me again once everything's fixed?" "She made a mistake. She admits that now." "Does she? Because the cease and desist letter suggests otherwise." I stood up. "Dad, I gave everything to Whitman and Company. Nights, weekends, vacations interrupted by emergency calls. I earned the respect of our staff and clients through years of solving problems and keeping promises. Tracy thought she could erase all that with a single announcement. She was wrong." My father looked defeated. "What do you want? Money? A public apology?" "Neither. I want to build something of my own, with people who value integrity and hard work over titles and politics. I'm sorry that's not with Whitman and Company anymore, but that wasn't my choice." After he left, I found Abigail waiting outside the conference room. "Everything okay?" "Family business," I said with a wry smile. "Complicated as always." "We just got another call from Riverview Imports," she said. "They want to schedule a meeting." Riverview was one of Whitman's largest accounts, one I had personally secured 5 years earlier. The thought of them reaching out sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. "Set it up for tomorrow," I replied, trying to keep my voice level. "And Abigail? Let's make sure we're ready to handle an account of that size." She grinned. "We already are." The Riverview meeting exceeded all expectations. Their purchasing director, Gregory Pearson, had worked with me for years and didn't mince words. "We tried to make it work with Whitman after you left," he explained as we sat in our conference room. "But 3 shipments were delayed, documentation was missing, and frankly, no one could answer our questions. I'm sorry to hear that," I said diplomatically. "Don't be. Their loss is potentially your gain." He slid a folder across the table. "This is what we need. Can Whitman Solutions handle it?" I opened the folder and reviewed their requirements. It was substantial, nearly double the volume of any client we'd signed so far. "We can handle it," I confirmed after careful consideration. "We have the expertise and the systems. We're still building out our warehouse capacity, but we can manage this volume." "Good. I've got approval to sign a 6-month trial contract, with the option to extend to 3 years if all goes well." As we worked through the details, I felt a sense of validation wash over me. This wasn't just any client. This was proof that what we were building had real value. After Gregory left, I gathered the team to share the news. The celebration was just getting started when my phone rang. It was Eleanor. "Mary, are you sitting down?" she asked. "What's happened?" "Whitman and Company just filed for a temporary restraining order against you and Whitman Solutions. They're claiming theft of trade secrets, tortious interference with business relationships, and several other colorful accusations." My stomach dropped. "On what grounds?" "They're alleging you copied confidential client information and proprietary logistics systems before you left. They've submitted a declaration from Tracy claiming she has evidence you accessed restricted files in the weeks before your termination." I felt the blood drain from my face. "That's impossible. I know. But they've convinced a judge to grant a temporary hearing. We need to prepare a response immediately." I ended the call and found everyone staring at me. Their celebratory mood evaporated. "What is it?" Thomas asked. I explained the situation as calmly as I could. "This is a delay tactic," I concluded. "They're trying to damage our reputation with potential clients and slow our momentum." "Can they do that?" one of the newer team members asked nervously. "They can try," Thomas answered before I could. "But Mary runs the cleanest operation I've ever seen. There's no evidence because there was no wrongdoing." His confidence bolstered me. "Eleanor will handle the legal response. We need to focus on what we can control, serving our clients and building this business." The team dispersed, but Thomas lingered. "There's something else," he said quietly. "What is it?" "I've been hearing from friends still at Whitman. Tracy's brought in management consultants. They're conducting interviews with remaining staff, asking about how information was shared, who had access to what." I frowned. "She's building a case. Or trying to. But here's the interesting part. The board isn't unanimous about this approach. 2 members have expressed concern that the litigation will be more damaging than helpful." "Who told you that?" "Jennifer from accounting. Her husband plays golf with Harold Peters. Harold was one of my father's oldest friends and a founding board member. If he was questioning Tracy's strategy, it could signal a shifting dynamic." "Keep your ear to the ground," I told Thomas. "But we proceed as planned. We have nothing to hide and everything to build." That night I couldn't sleep. The irony wasn't lost on me. Tracy had fired me to consolidate her power, only to face a crumbling company, and now had resorted to legal maneuvers to stop my success. This wasn't business anymore. It was personal. The hearing was scheduled for the following week, giving us precious little time to prepare. Eleanor worked tirelessly, gathering affidavits from team members confirming they had left Whitman and Company voluntarily. I provided detailed records of my final weeks at the company, showing I had accessed only the files necessary for my regular duties. "Their case is weak," Eleanor assured me, "but perception matters almost as much as facts. We need to appear absolutely professional and above reproach." The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully in a conservative navy suit, pulling my hair back into a simple style that conveyed competence rather than flash. As I drove downtown to the courthouse, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Dad. I hesitated before answering. "Hello?" "Mary, I tried to stop this," he said, his voice strained. "The lawsuit. I told Tracy and the board it would only make things worse. But they didn't listen. No. Tracy has convinced most of them that you planned this from the beginning, that you deliberately sabotaged the company." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "And you? What do you believe?" A long pause followed. "I believe I made a mistake when I supported Tracy for chairman. I was impressed by her credentials, her connections, but I forgot what really makes a business work." For the first time since this all began, I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I'm going to testify today, as a witness for your side." I nearly swerved off the road. "What?" "I've submitted an affidavit stating that I have no knowledge of any wrongdoing on your part, and that in my 40 years of business experience, I've never seen you act with anything but the highest integrity. I pulled into the courthouse parking lot and took a deep breath. Tracy will see this as the ultimate betrayal. Perhaps, but the ultimate betrayal was mine when I didn't stand up for you in the first place. Inside the courtroom, I saw Tracy for the first time since she had fired me. She sat rigidly beside her attorneys, her expression coldly confident. When our eyes met, she didn't flinch or look away. I nodded slightly and took my seat beside Eleanor. The proceedings moved quickly. Whitman and Company's attorneys presented their case, alleging I had systematically undermined the company and stolen proprietary information. They produced printouts of files they claimed I had accessed inappropriately. When it was our turn, Eleanor methodically dismantled their arguments. She presented testimony from the IT director, who had also resigned, confirming that the files in question were ones I regularly used in my role. She submitted declarations from clients stating they had sought out Whitman Solutions on their own initiative after experiencing service problems. And then came the moment that changed everything. My father was called to testify. He walked to the witness stand, looking every bit the distinguished businessman he had always been. But when he spoke, his voice carried an emotion I rarely heard from him: regret. My daughter Mary has been the operational backbone of Whitman and Company for 18 years, he stated clearly. Her removal was abrupt and without proper transition, a decision I regrettably supported at the time. Any subsequent issues the company has faced are the result of that poor management decision, not any misconduct on Mary's part. The judge listened attentively, occasionally glancing at Tracy, whose face had turned ashen. When all testimony concluded, he took only a brief recess before returning with his decision. The court finds insufficient evidence to support the claims against Mary Whitman and Whitman Solutions. The request for a temporary restraining order is denied. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered, alerted to the family drama playing out in the business community. As cameras flashed, I stood beside my father and Eleanor, maintaining a dignified silence while Tracy pushed through the crowd to her waiting car. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The legal victory created unexpected momentum for Whitman Solutions. Within days, 3 more former Whitman and Company clients reached out to schedule meetings. The Nashville Business Journal ran a feature story about the courthouse drama, and while I had declined to comment directly, the article painted a flattering picture of our new venture. What truly surprised me was the impact on Tracy. According to Thomas's sources, she had been reprimanded by the board following the failed legal action. The litigation costs and negative publicity had only compounded Whitman and Company's operational problems. A month after the hearing, my father invited me to dinner. We met at a quiet restaurant away from the business district, where he looked more relaxed than I had seen him in years. The board held an emergency meeting yesterday, he said after we ordered. Tracy has been placed on probation. They've appointed a co-chairman to oversee operations while she focuses on client retention. I absorbed this news carefully. Who's the co-chairman? Harold Peters. He was the most vocal opponent of the lawsuit against you. And how does Tracy feel about this arrangement? My father smiled slightly. About as well as you'd expect. She argued against it, but the quarterly numbers were impossible to ignore. Revenue is down 28%. I took a sip of water, considering my response. I'm not celebrating their struggles, Dad. I know you're not. That's the difference between you and Tracy. He leaned forward. The board has also authorized me to approach you about a potential collaboration. What kind of collaboration? Nothing that would compromise Whitman Solutions. Just a limited partnership for certain large-scale projects that would benefit from our combined resources. Think of it as a first step toward healing. The proposal was unexpected. Part of me wanted nothing more to do with Whitman and Company, but another part recognized the practical benefits of such an arrangement. I'll consider it, I said finally. But I'll need to discuss it with my team. They left because they believed in a different way of doing business. Fair enough, my father agreed. They put their trust in you. Don't betray that. The partnership proposal sparked intense debate among our leadership team. Some saw it as a vindication and a smart business move. Others worried it would undermine everything we had built. "We left because of how Whitman operates," Abigail argued during our strategy meeting. "If we partner with them, aren't we tacitly endorsing those practices?" "Not necessarily," Thomas countered. "We'd be setting the terms. We could actually influence them to improve their operations." I listened carefully to every perspective, appreciating the passion and principles that drove each team member. After 3 hours of discussion, we agreed to a series of conditions under which we would consider the partnership. I presented these terms to my father the following day. Whitman Solutions would remain completely independent. The partnership would be project-based only. Our team would have full operational control over any joint ventures, and Tracy would have no direct authority over our staff. "These are strong terms," my father observed after reviewing the document, "but not unreasonable given the circumstances." "They reflect our values," I replied. "We've built something special here, and we won't compromise that." A week later, the Whitman and Company board unanimously approved our terms, with one abstention: Tracy. The news made the front page of the business section. "Whitman family reconciles in groundbreaking partnership," read the headline, accompanied by a photo of my father and me shaking hands in front of the Whitman Solutions office. As I reviewed the finalized agreement, a notification popped up on my computer, an email from Tracy. I hesitated before opening it, preparing myself for bitterness or accusations. Instead, I found something unexpected. "Mary, the board has made their decision, and I will comply professionally. You've won this round through means I still question. But know this, I'm watching and learning. This isn't over. Tracy." I forwarded the email to Eleanor with a simple note. "For the record." Then I turned my attention back to leading my company, the work that had always mattered most. When our receptionist buzzed to say Riverview's representatives had arrived for our contract renewal meeting, I smiled. Tracy was right about one thing. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. As I walked into the conference room, I reflected on how differently things had turned out from what I had initially planned. I hadn't sought revenge. I had simply created something better. And in doing so, I had achieved the most satisfying victory of all. Looking back on this journey from fired executive to successful founder, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying what hurt you, but building something they can't ignore.